The framing assignment had to deal with focus, focal point, emphasis, calling attention to things, and causing image and word to work together within the same design space. And you were to couch this or frame this in the context of an internet meme. So with memes, obviously typography is important, and also the image and the juxtaposition, the choice of the image with the words are what actually make the meme. What we're looking for here is the choices that you've made, the layout, the design, and how everything works together. So these are the submissions. And I'm not going to discuss that one because it is less original, it's less innovative. Here we're talking about growth, and we're talking about kind of expanding and spreading out and stretching out and things like that. And so the quote works. It's having a little difficulty finding a place in relationship to what the ivy is doing on the wall. So it's kind of like we're doing this. So it's an interesting way of kind of relating the type to the background, but it's about a 50-50 split, and the type is framed by the ivy to a point and then by the edges of the design. So here's the ivy, and then here are the edges of the design. So this is the main area that things should fit in. One of the issues with this is the lack of legibility because of lack of light-dark contrast. If you squint your eye, a lot of the letters tend to fuse with the brick in the background. So either the background brick needs to be darker overall, or it needs to be lighter. One option is actually to fit the text within this area. So forth, and make it dark, make it really dark. And that way, you can see how obviously the black stands out against the lighter background. That would have been the better choice, because with the white, what's happening is visually, it's kind of sinking into the background. The green bars that you have, which I guess you did that to try to contrast with the white, they actually reduce legibility because you're splitting the top and the bottom of each letter, of each word, and making the top part harder to read and the bottom part easier to read. So there's a lot of visual stuff that has to go on as somebody is trying to read this. And we kind of will focus on the green rather than the white, because the green has greater difference. It's darker than the background than the white is. There's more contrast. The white and the brick color, the light brick color, like right in here, very close. The green with that brick color, there's a lot more contrast. And the thing is that the eye is going to see the contrast. With Gestalt design theory, there's a principle, one of the principles of Gestalt is the irradiation, or the light-dark principle we see because of changes in light and dark. And so the more difference between, the more value contrast we have, the easier it is to see things. When you have less value contrast, it makes things a lot more difficult. So you can see that down here, we've got a lot of value contrast. Those parts of those words are easy to read. Not quite so easy over here. So you're creating this kind of ambivalent, can you read me or not? You're not helping the reader along very well. One of the things that perhaps you could have done was just outline with a black outline. And that's done a lot in memes, but it adds complexity. And the better form of this would have been to, as I said, reduce the size of your text block and just fit it using black rather than white and make it work that way. But if you do that here, it becomes less legible. Okay, this is an interesting shot. It feels very dense. The choice of the figure with the Highland sign, it looks like he is actually holding the sign or hanging on it in some way. He's holding it up. This is a really odd tangency right there. This is really quiet. The figure is reacting to the speaker. If we do this, catch the center, the speaker is kind of right in the center of that design space. And this is small and quiet. So you're being very subtle here with what you're saying. Is that what you want? Is that what you're trying to convey? So if this is your thing, and you're talking about be a voice based on this, are you a quiet voice or a loud voice? So what's the mood? What's the overall idea of this? And should this be over in here instead? Should this be cropped differently? So that maybe he's not front and center, and then this would make it would be better balanced to pull this over here. This actually would be nice if that weren't there, but it is there, and it does identify, where this took place. By the way, if you notice this distance and compare that with this distance, they're not centered. So there's a lack of balance in this. It's unbalanced. It's not purposefully imbalanced. It needs stabilizing. All of these are psychological things that will affect the viewer. This is hard to read. We see this very easily. We lose this, and then we pick it up again. So maybe that could have been related more to the headline. But for framing purposes, if you consider it, this, and this are actually framing this area naturally within the photograph. So this should at least have gone into that area. Another option would be to maybe drop it a little lower and make it larger. The choice of lowercase, by the way, has a different vibe than if it's uppercase. So this is a subtle, quiet suggestion. This is not a take action right now. So here we have a guy who's working out, and we're using a distressed typeface, and it looks like you're aligning straight down here pretty much. This feels way too small. This being the psychological line that is created between the guy and his reflection definitely brings us to see this, and this becomes emphasized. This is not centered within the horizontal distance, and neither is this, but it works because of where it is. It's relating to him, and it's relating to him. It actually could move over a little bit. And this really does need to be a little larger. This is really diminutive and insignificant. So if this is the whole quote, this and this could be more equal in size. But good use of framing, good use of the idea, the choice of photo along with the quote makes sense. There's nothing that's really out of place about it. Looks like colors here have been picked up from the photo, and the lighter kind of Naples yellowy color looks like it was probably picked up from somewhere in the flesh tone areas. Works rather than the red. The red is darker, the orange here is darker, and we wouldn't read good or start as well against the dark background if this color were used. Okay, with this we have frame in frame, in frame, in frame. So we have the square is divided into a variety of zones. First division is right here, and then the second division is here. and then we have this, this, and this. The hand lettering, basically the outlined type, works. It would be easier to read if it appeared to be in front of the triangles and the red line. So in other words, if instead of being a solid red line, it was actually negative here, 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 and here, so that we could read the letter forms more easily. Because we're kind of losing the whole point of having the letter forms. And it's just a matter of cutting the paper into, smaller pieces right there, so that we can read things more easily. Because if you're going to use typography that is meant to be read, because you don't always have to use letter forms as, pieces of language communication. They can be pure shape. But where you are trying to communicate something, it does become important that things are not too obliterated. And, you've separated the word stand from the word up. We need to read this as a single phrase. And because this is on its side and this is on a diagonal, it's hard to make this movement. I mean, we get the point, but it takes a minute to get there, or it takes a moment to get there. A lot of use of layering in this. It's mostly achromatic. The primary colors come in a very nice way just as framing devices. So it's actually more of a study in framing within a frame than it is framing word with image and image with word. So the way this actually works is that the visuals, the graphic aspect, is framing the textual content. Okay, this is the last one, and the repetition makes that noise sense, which is, I think, goes along with what you're trying to say. This could be larger. This feels small and diminutive. Everything kind of moves toward this, but it would be kind of cool if it were like that. So it's fairly simple. There is a proportional reduction, this distance to this, to this, to this, to this, and it works pretty well. Don't know that we need the black frame all the way around. Could it be simplified and so that we're actually getting this? If we lose the black frame, it might have more impact. So just having the black frame all the way around kind of quiets and contains everything, and that contradicts the purpose of the repeated image. Okay, with this one, by the way, it's was uploaded as a JPEG, and there was something wrong with it. I couldn't open it directly in Photoshop, so I had to open it in Preview and then export it as a PNG. So then I opened up the PNG in Photoshop. So I don't know what happened, but there was something wrong with the file. We can't read this. If you squint, it is very difficult to read the text. And you actually have two places where you can place the text to frame it, but you're not utilizing that framing area. Placing the text right in here is one option. Your other option is to frame the text here. So if you frame the text on the lighter area, the text needs to go dark because you can't read it. There's not enough value contrast. It is illegible and not readable. It's unreadable. The readability and the legibility are both problematic here. So you can see the contrast, just picking up a color from over here, you can see the amount of contrast that we now have. And how easy that is to read. So by running the text over basically beyond the natural frame that is presented here, so you have all of this out here, and you have this here, and you have a thin, somewhat difficult to read typeface choice. it kind of defeats the purpose of having a meme in the first place. So better choices could have been made here to actually, frame the text and make this piece highly impactful visually. It's a good choice of image, and the monochromatic, the warm blue, just the value tonalities are very nice. It has a very intellectual feel to it, which is helpful because that works with the quote. And the idea of clouds being vapor, and vapor kind of disappears without a trace, and so that also works really well with the quote. So your image choice and your quote choice work well together. It's just you didn't really utilize the framing possibilities that the photo presents. And the color of your text and the color chosen for the text makes it really difficult to read on the light ground.